So I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but Iowa's got a little bit of a gambling problem. The state of Iowa.
What makes you say that?
Yeah, just Iowa State players betting on the Cy-Hawk Bowl.
Oh, yeah, that's
betting on other stuff.
I mean, it's just Iowa, though, right? That's not like a bigger problem, is there?
No. I mean, well, according to Kirk Ferentz, the head coach of Iowa, he mentioned yesterday in talking with the media locally there in Iowa about just sort of how he found things a little bit interesting in reference to the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigations, the DCI, and just how they've looked into the scandals involving gambling with current players, former players at Iowa and Iowa State. And he had this to say in regards to all of it.
I mentioned the DCI level. That's curious to me. Only in that, I've had a little time to think about it now. There's 49 states by my count that play football, have college universities that play football. I think it's interesting that we're the only state I'm aware of, and I think it's interesting too, more than 2 colleges in our state. So it's kind of interesting how that all came about. Not excusing anybody that's involved. And then also, I assume they've, maybe had charges against non-athletes as well. I don't know that. Point there is I don't know a lot of things right now, and we'll deal with what we do know when it's presented to us.
So Kirk Ferentz doesn't know a lot, but he does find it interesting.
Well, look, that's just one way that people speak to kind of make it a thought-provoking comment for others, right? Like he's basically saying, why aren't you in the media asking this question? Which it's a fair thing to say, in all honesty. Like, is this just specific to Iowa? Is the state of Iowa and their, rules of gaming commission, are they the only ones who are that, I guess, clamping down on this sort of activity that no other state is willing to do so? Or it's just, the Iowa student athletes? I mean, he brought up the point about is it only student athletes? Well, unless there's underage, betting and they're doing it through their parents. I'm not really sure what he was pointing to. Maybe he's is he throwing his managers or trainers under the bus because they have insider knowledge? I'm just a bit curious as to what that comment had to do with anything else. But it's a fair, statement to make and bring up that if it's going on in Iowa, it's probably going on elsewhere.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. More. There's probably other places where it's going on more,
but also
UNLV.
I'm just saying.
But Kirk Ferentz has to understand how this works. Whoever's the first one, they're going to get all the heat. They want to set a precedent that you can't do this, and so this is almost a warning shot to everybody else around college football that hey, we do look into this, and you will get caught. Look what's happening to Iowa. They're the example that's being set right now. So for Kirk Ferentz to come out and go, well, I find it a little bit curious. Yeah, of course. Well, just say it. Like, what other programs out there do you think have gambling issues? Just say it. But to come off that way and just to point fingers and say, well, it's interesting that we're the only state that's getting investigated when it comes to this. Like, come on, dude. You know how this works. You were the first one to get popped for it, and so they're going to lay the hammer on you. That's how this works. So I find it a little bit funny that Kirk Ferentz has taken this direction. But
what direction? I mean, he might be acknowledging the fact that since they are the first, he's going to get popped for it. But I think the problem is everyone seems to make it, and we've done this. Like, we are guilty of this on this show, making it seem like it's purely an Iowa thing. Now, granted, that's because Iowa Sam usually is
that's just
on the boards.
And he's very offensive and protective when it comes to Iowa.
It has a little bit to do with that. But it's a fair point. I mean, if it's going on elsewhere, why isn't this being brought up anywhere else? It seems like it obviously is in the NFL. It doesn't seem like it is in college outside of Iowa State. Or maybe they're not bringing it up as big of a deal about it. I think the hard thing is for a lot of the Hawkeye fans or Iowa fans, whether it's Iowa State or Iowa, in some of these cases, you've got guys who are betting against their team and they're playing in the game or they're laying bets where they could ultimately manipulate the outcome. I mean, the Arlen Bruce one, who was the wide receiver for Iowa, that's the most damning. And then it makes you go back and comb through every catch, everything he did to see. I mean, I was talking about this with a buddy over the weekend. he had bet the under in a game where he scored the touchdown to hit the over. And someone had said he didn't seem too thrilled after that touchdown. It was kind of a ho-hum touchdown celebration. There's another example of him catching a ball to get past the 6 on 3rd and 2, and he stumbles in the open field. I mean, if he keeps his feet, he's in the end zone for a touchdown. But he stumbles in the open field. And so it makes you want to say, okay, did he lay a bet on that game? Did he have the under in that game too? And he was trying to – and by the way, I think 2 plays later, Iowa turned over the football. And there was a time when there was a botched punt. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you could potentially manipulate the game. And I feel like Kirk Ferentz has to understand he's got to get a grip on that at Iowa. I mean, I don't care if it's going on other places. You can't worry so much about other places. You just need to worry about what's in-house. Unless he knows something we don't, and they're being targeted for some reason, which Matt Campbell should feel the same way then in asking his, those same questions. You got to clean up some in-house stuff going on right now.
Do you guys think that we would ever hear if this was more rampant in college football? Because I don't. I think they would figure out a way to handle it, and it would never get out. Because if it turns out that it's more than just Iowa State, but it's also other programs around college football, now everybody's going to be second-guessing what the hell they're watching every week.
Can I ask you guys a question? And I'm going to first direct it to LeVar. Because, LeVar, like when you played, and especially in college, did you pay attention to lines and spreads and all that stuff?
No.
I didn't either. Like, I didn't grow up in a household where there was any betting. Like, I remember at some point, whether my freshman or sophomore year, a senior made – I think I was a freshman because a senior made a comment to me. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, you don't look in the paper to see what the spread is? I said, no. I said, I don't even understand what that stuff means. And, Jonas, you can attest to this. Like, if anyone's taught me anything about betting, you've probably the person I'd credit the most.
It's a wonderful world.
Well, that may be the case, but, like – what's crazy to me is there's that many kids now who are into it. Like I was just so ignorant to it, and maybe I was one of the few. Maybe it was more rampant than I thought. Like, did you have a bunch of guys, LeVar, in your locker room that like knew all that stuff was going on?
I don't know. I never paid. That was never a part of my conversations. So I would be totally oblivious to that. Like there's just certain things you're oblivious to, like what guys are into. Certain guys are into certain things. Like I'm not hearing about I could tell by the way Jansen smelled when he came into the locker room every once in a while that him and Corey Raymer had just come from hunting to go straight to meetings and didn't have time to shower
and get
it off. Whatever that spray is they use that attracts deer or whatever. Horrible smell. But, I mean, outside of eventually asking, like, hey, John, why you smell like that, dog? Like, oh, I just came in from, they like to, if I recall correctly, they like to bow and arrow, hunt. So that was their thing. I just, I was focused on what I was focused on. I never heard about anything. Like, I don't know. Like I kind of like sitting there thinking like, why was I so oblivious? But yeah, I don't recall hearing about gambling, other than when we were gambling, right? Like we sit down, we throw bones, or we play tonk. Tonk was that was like the one that was big for our team. Like some guys played like you said, Boo-Ray and stuff like that. But
Spades.
Tonk, Tonk was the game we liked because it was quick. You know what I mean? Like you get in, you get out. Like you could play Tonk anywhere. So I mean, me and Champ used to sit on the planes and play Tonk. Like we'd be right there. That was our seats, our row. We'd be playing Tonk. Like that was it. Like that was the extent of gambling. Is you bring a couple $1,000, boom, you sit there, you play Tonk, done. Like that was it. Not sports betting, not sports gambling. Right. The only thing I had ever heard about that was on Blue Chips back then.
That's right, man.
By the way, Blue Chips. Now looking back, pretty spot on.
So accurate.
Pretty spot on.
Like I can't tell you how many college coaches offered me a tractor. For my family.
Yeah.
Being from Ohio.
You were Ricky Rowe. You were the original.
They pulled up and there was like a John Deere tractor, and I was like, Man, I live in a suburb. Like, bro, like, you don't need to bring all that. Like, we're not, plowing any fields or anything. Well, you couldn't use an extra tractor? Like, no, dude. I'm in a neighborhood. My neighbor's looking at you right now. You can go ahead and tow that thing back out of here. Give me a John Deere. I mean, what am I going to do with that?